What do we want for the eyes?
We want really pretty eyes.
Really pretty eyes.
Yeah, we want it to be pretty.
I'll make sure that they're really pretty. There we go.
Those are really pretty.
I think that looks...
I really like this,
right.
you know?
Maybe change the angle.
Oh, you go fly away. It's like a butterfly.
Welcome back, guys. I am Ben, or I go by Follygon around here. I am a professional digital sculptor, and this is my girlfriend, Abby, who just recently started digitally sculpting in ZBrush. She's done 3 or 4 sculpts now, and I am going to be critiquing her first few digital sculpts here. What do you think of digital sculpting so far?
I had not heard of it till I met you.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. I like it.
Are you sure?
I'm very new to it. I'm very new, but it's it's fun. I like it. I like it. I like what you do with it. I like seeing what you can do with it. It's fun to mess with.
It is fun to mess with. That is true. I have Abby's few sculpts loaded up here in ZBrush, and I am going to be critiquing them in the order that she completed them. Starting off with the first thing that I recommend a lot of beginners start off with, which is a nose. And not the actual rest of the head here. That doesn't matter. That is not important. That wasn't the assignment. Yes, I give Abby very strict homework. You got anything to say about your nose before I get in and tear it apart?
No.
Nose?
No.
I'm gonna load in her reference really quick that she used. So, is there anything to you that immediately stands out since it's been a little while since you last looked at your nose? I find that having, a little bit of time in between can help refresh the eyes.
The first things that I think stand out to me are that I can tell I was using very small strokes and small brush sizes because it looks kind of blocky and muddy. The tip of the nose stands out. It just looks weird. It looks like they have a callus on the tip of their nose.
A little witch warp, yes.
And the nostrils are kind of weird too. I tried to do, I used the move function to move the nostrils up into the nose, and it didn't go as smoothly as yours in your instructional video.
That's okay. It's really hard to get used to the tools when it's, your first time doing it. And this is your very first sculpt, and I think for your very first sculpt, you did a great job. So I actually have more polygons than you had on your original nose. But the first thing that I'm going to do here that I'm noticing about this nose is that from the front view, it looks like it's not pointed down quite as much. And these are 2 different noses, if I'm not mistaken. So when you're using 2 different noses, it can be tough. What I'm going to do is change the angle of your nose down a little bit. We might change that as we move forward. And I think we're going to make the bridge of the nose more narrow and the rest of the nose more narrow in general. Trying to get a little bit closer to what I'm seeing happening there.
How'd you move the bridge of the, no, not the bridge. How'd you move the tip of the nose down?
So I used a mask to do that really quick. I masked it off, and then I used the transpose line to rotate it. So I did it super quick because, I'm a professional.
You're very fast.
I'm a professional.
He's professional.
Now what I'm going to do is just a general kind of cleanup pass to start softening things out and fill in a couple of the gaps that you have here. Maybe switch over to the move brush a little bit, adjust to kind of fit that curve that we're seeing there with that nose. Just try to get a little bit closer. We will get rid of the rest of the head here soon because, it can be distracting from what we're trying to work on. Okay, so you mentioned the nostrils, right? You said that you kind of struggled with the nostrils there. I can tell that. So what I'm going to do, and I actually struggle with nostrils a little bit myself. I make them too big, and I make this wing of the nose, which is what this is called out here. Maybe the alar or something. Oh, you know?
No. I think that's right, though.
It sounds correct.
It sounds really right to me.
You just say anything with confidence. She's a nurse, so I feel like if anybody should know.
I do a lot of that. I do a lot of saying with confidence.
You're
fine.
So I've thickened up your alar, your nostril, or wing of the nose, sorry. And we are going to pull back on this area here. We're just trying to get the nostril to be not quite as large. Simultaneously, we're gonna just look at this edge here, make sure that we're kind of maintaining a top and bottom plane transition. We also just wanna look at this shape here. These noses are very different. The more we look at them, that becomes, more obvious. So we'll start to maybe push a little bit closer to this shape here, just kind of looking at the overall silhouette there. Still pretty messy, but...
Are you using your move brush to do that?
I was using my move brush to kind of pull down on that area. Specifically, I was using it with a little thing called backface masking, which is an auto masking feature. It only moves the geometry in the direction that you push it. So I pushed that way to the left, and it only moved that geometry on that side. So it's really cool for a lot of different things, but I like to use it to inflate specific areas.
I could have used that when I was sculpting my ear. And my nose, obviously, but also my ear.
We'll take a look at your ear here soon. I have now messed with that a little bit more. There's some geometry getting a little funky here in a couple areas. We can maybe quickly, fill in some of this. We want to look at what's called our extreme angles, which is essentially, bottom up, top down, make sure things are kind of looking okay from all those other angles, not looking too awkward. Just making sure things are looking okay, because we are sculptors, right? We have to make sure...
We are sculptors.
Yeah, exactly.
We are sculptors.
We have to make sure it looks good from every possible angle. I'm going to add a little bit more volume down here for what would be the transition into the lip, just to get this plane change heading out a little bit. Because if it feels really flat right around here at the bridge of the nose, it's going to feel a bit awkward. So I'm just going to push that in, or pull that out a little bit, push in a little bit right through here, and also try to get a little bit more of the connection right here for the rest of that nose. So there's actually a little bit of form here. It is not super noticeable on everybody, and sometimes it's not even present. So far, what do you think of your nose?
It still looks exactly the same.
Exactly the
same.
I would say that I genuinely didn't make too many changes here to your nose. No, I'm serious. I think you actually did a really nice job with this. I would say that my main critique of your overall nose was that it was just a little bit messy. Yeah, but for the most part, I think you did a really nice job. Our objective here when starting out is to have these kind of hard planes to differentiate and just, be visible for us to kind of mentally be aware of them, visually be aware of them. So, for example, bridge of the nose, there's one. But as we continue forward into refining our sculpture more and more, we need it to feel more fleshy and less kind of robotic, less hard surface. Hard surface is like you know what, never mind. It doesn't matter. It's not important.
Doesn't
matter. The objective is to get towards a more organic or fleshy state now. Like this hard plane that I kind of sketched in here initially, right? That needs to soften out now because that's not present in our actual nose over here anywhere. If we look at that, we just know that that is a plane change.
Okay.
So by starting off understanding that and now starting to soften it, we can feel even more like a nose. I think I'm gonna chop off your stuff here. Are you okay with that?
I worked really hard on that stuff, but...
Okay, we'll leave the stuff.
No, I didn't.
Okay, we'll get rid of the stuff. So now it's a little bit of a single focus here on the nose, right? And now with the last little bit of cleanup here, I am mainly just cleaning up the surface, getting rid of any kind of general messiness that I'm seeing. If we want to make it a little more shallow, which I think we do, I'm going to do that here just by scaling it specifically in this direction. So see what a big difference that makes there? Feels like a nose, right?
It feels like a nose.
It felt like a nose before. I think you did a really nice job on it previously before we made any changes. There's a little bit of an awkward cavity in there that we could spend some time cleaning up, but it's fine.
Were you using the clay brush on that or the inflate brush?
Neither. I was using the trim brush and holding the Alt key. So if you have a little cavity like so, and use a trim brush and hold the Alt key, you can kind of fill that in, and it'll fill it up to your surface here.
Oh, that would have been handy on my ear.
You keep saying a lot of things that have been handy on your ear. I'm noticing we'll check out the ear here very soon. But I don't know, we could sit here and tweak with this for a while. There's, so many changes that you could make to anything. No artwork or sculpture, anything is ever going to be finished. We like to say that it's only abandoned. So I think that's a pretty good stopping point for working on your nose. Let's do a quick comparison of where we started. Like I said, I could work on it more, but we'll just stop there. So there is where we started. Right. So the main critique, like I said, was that it was a little messy.
A little messy.
But I would say that your overall shape, for the most part, is pretty good. I think that in general, if we're just talking about the major primary forms, the major plane changes, I think you're in a good place. But with a little bit of cleanup and a little bit of some reshaping to a couple areas.
Just a little bit.
It really didn't take that long.
It didn't take that long at all.
Okay, so let's move on to your ear.
Okay.
And let's import your ear reference, which was this one, I believe.
I used one reference. I'm a master. I only need one reference. References are for chumps.
To quote me.
Quote you.
That's not true. References are
for chumps.
References are not for chumps. You should always use a reference as often as you
Don't
can.
listen to her. You should always use a reference. Don't listen.
Okay, so taking a look at your ear. You actually made 2 ears.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. You got one here.
I didn't work very long on this one.
You didn't work very long. You don't need to make excuses. There's no reason.
That's right. I don't. I am a beginner. There are no excuses. There is only, this is my ear.
This is your ear. No, it's not that there are no excuses, which there aren't. But this is only your second thing that you've ever sculpted, ever.
Yeah,
right?
And I left to go take a nap.
And then you went to go take a nap. And this is the third thing that you've ever sculpted. Ever. I
napped pretty quick on this one.
So which one did you spend more time on?
The first one.
The first one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we'll take a look at this one. So the first thing is something that I've already pointed out to you and told you about in another piece on your other ear, actually, which is that you have that little mess going on back there.
Really bad keloid.
A keloid. Is that what that's called? Is that what is that?
That's where you get a piercing, and usually scar tissue grows kind of around the piercing and creates like this hard raised area. You don't usually get them there, but that's what that reminds me of.
So you get a hole in your ear is what you're saying?
No.
Not quite. So you have a hole in your ear. Not necessarily. You have multiple holes in your ear. This is caused when your geometry gets really, really thin or essentially close to the other side of your shape here. So I'm going to show you a quick cross-section of your ear so that you can see exactly what happened there. This is pretty thick in here, right? But back here, it starts to weave in, it overlaps. So that's what happened. So there's a really easy way to fix this. You just have to fill in a bunch of new kind of geometry. And it's going to be really gross and messy at first, but it's worth it to kind of move forward. But very quickly, we'll do another quick check. There we go. So we've added quite a bit of thickness in there. We can check from the other side, and there we go. All fixed up.
That is much better.
So that fixes a technical issue that you were having there, but they're in a little bit of a form issue because it was super, super thin, and that's not what we would see with an ear. But from here, we need to actually critique the rest of your form. So there are, a lot of different ways that we could do this just by eyeballing it. But one of my recommendations for you is that if you ever feel stuck sculpting and you can't really see what's going on or what's wrong, you just take your image and you turn down the opacity on it pretty low, just like that, scale it up, and overlay it over top of your sculpt here. And we will turn on that, which you are familiar with, right?
I do like this feature. I think this is one of my favorite things you've shown me because I get the geometry all over the place, and it's nice to be able to click on something and just bring it back to where it was, but not change it.
I think a lot of what you have here is pretty close to the actual ear. There are, with this image, because of the value there, it's a little bit hard to see through to the actual sculpt. So sometimes what you can do is you can make your sculpt or your 3D form a really drastic color difference. That can be helpful occasionally. So I'm noticing now I can see kind of how this edge is misaligned here. I could start to thicken that up. So can you see how that edge is kind of misaligned there?
Yeah, I was trying to move that over when I was sculpting.
It's a lot easier to kind of see that now.
Yeah.
The larger form, for the most part, I think you're pretty well aligned there with, I think, some smoothing, some cleanup there. So you can start to get that a little bit closer. Needs to come down here. And also, it's kind of hard to work on something when it's just floating here in space, when it's completely independent. When you have the rest of the head, it interacts with that, right? Like I said, with the nose, I started to sculpt in some of that lip at the bottom because all of the parts of the face interact with each other. So it's really important that you kind of keep that in mind when you are sculpting. When you have something floating like this, you're gonna struggle a little bit to get things to feel perfect. I don't remember the names, anatomical names of everything super well, as you noticed with the nose. So I think we have like the tragus down here, which could use some form change. The anti-tragus, and I can't remember which one is the helix or anti-helix. Do you know?
Yes,
Oh, you
that's
do?
the helix and the anti-helix.
So this is the helix?
Yes.
And this is the anti-helix? Or,
yes.
Or this is the anti-helix?
No, that's not the anti-helix. That's the anti-helix. I know that because when I was 18, everybody was getting their anti-helixes pierced.
All about the
little
anti-helix.
triple piercing. It was all the rage. I didn't do it. I got some weird thing where I got piercings from I got one
Through
here, and here.
Here? What?
Yeah. I
what?
still have the holes in my ears. It ended up looking ridiculous. I thought it would like make this really cool like line with my tragus piercing. It ended up making a weird like check mark that I was not a fan of.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
So ultimately I took those out.
That's smart. That's smart.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we are going to move this back. So I will just kind of eyeball some of these shapes here. Mainly I want to be able to see this form while I sculpt, and I'm decent enough at eyeballing stuff for the most part here when sculpting. So I'm just gonna fill in some of that. I'm looking at the highlights and shadows, so I can see that the form comes up a little bit more through here, starts to dip in a little bit more here. We also get the hood of that helix shape kind of pushing up and in side of there. So we'll have to get that. You got that coming down and up and connecting there, and then dipping in here. So you got a lot of the main shapes. I think you've done a pretty good job there. Did you do anything different between your nose and your ear? Any like drastic changes that you noticed, like in workflow or tools?
I have to think about that because I sculpted them about a week apart, and since they're like my very first and very second sculpt, I could have done a whole lot differently from each other.
And not even known it.
Right.
So,
I think it was easier for me to use the reference photo on this one because noses are such an ambiguous form that even a reference photo kind of can be a little difficult to use just because it's some indistinct lights and shadows, and then the ear is a lot more distinct on its, I don't know, topography. On this one, I tried some masking where I masked out the shape of the inside of the ear and the little like shape at the bottom and pushed that in just to kind of get started.
Nice.
Which is maybe why I ended up with very, very thin geometry in the end. I didn't know about the damn standard brush at that point.
I'm sorry.
So that's okay. I used the pinch brush a lot.
Yeah, that'd be tough.
Yeah, and then I tried again later on a second ear and used a damn standard. And I didn't try for very long, so it didn't get very good, but it was a lot easier to do this cutting stuff here with that brush.
That's okay. Do you know about Lazy Mouse? Have I shown you that before?
You've shown me Lazy Mouse. Sometimes I like that for the pinch brush.
It's very nice with the pinch brush. It's very nice with any brush that if your objective is to create a mark or a line or, a curve or something like that, it's very nice to have the ability to create either a straight line or, a really nice C curve or whatever you need. It just kind of makes it easy to create that form. And anytime you have the chance to make something easier, unless you're, trying to practice something specifically, I say you should do it. You should always work smarter, not harder.
That's very true.
A little bit of a tough thing for you is because you only have this reference here from the side view of the ear, from the profile. Because of that, you don't really have too much information for this view or this view, right? And I don't think you had other references, right?
No, I'm very bold. Those are her chumps.
So that's actually okay, but it makes it a little tough for you to understand some of the other shapes here. So because we are, 3D artists, we gotta look at those other angles, those extreme angles, and try to figure those out a little bit more. Wipe the spit off the screen.
Gross.
Oh, there's another one. Yeah, they just kind of pop up.
Disgusting. Disgusting.
And then what we're gonna do is take a look at your ear and thin it out quite a bit, because it's very thick if we take a look at it from this angle. So I think I'm just gonna start by doing an overall thinning of everything.
Maybe he was a boxer.
If he was a boxer, I think his ears would look a lot worse.
Yeah, he'd have the cauliflower ears.
Right. So typically a pattern that you will see in an ear from this view is that this shape of the ear here, this inner kind of helix shape, whatever that's called, sticks out a little bit further than the helix here.
I wondered about that, and I thought to myself, if I had a second reference image, I could check on this. But I didn't have one.
So that's a common rhythm. That's not always the case. The thing is with rules when you're talking about art is that they are more of guidelines than anything else. You know, you could follow like an 8-head rule or a 7-head rule when you're creating a character, but real humans don't follow those rules perfectly. They are meant to fit kind of an ideal or help you get things where they need to go.
Now I'm looking at your ear.
Now you're looking at my ear and you're like, wow, this guy's ear is
ridiculous,
messed up.
Oh my gosh.
So do you see anything in my ear that maybe we should try to get? Take a gander.
You have... You're right. The anatomy of that inner ridge portion does come out farther.
Oh, mine does do that. See, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've taken photos of my ears before, strictly for art reasons.
Strictly for art, because what else would it be for? Hey, baby.
Got those ear pics?
I noticed that it was part of your profile, like your dating profile, was that it was just pictures of your ears, and there was no face. There was
just
no
ears?
face. There was just ears.
That's how we met.
That is how we met on
earmatch.com. Right, earmatch.com.
I had photoshopped all my pictures of my ears, obviously,
right?
Because I have those leftover holes from those weird piercings, and that was embarrassing.
Got a little spot healing tool in there.
Yeah. You know, some amateur Photoshop.
So one thing I mentioned to you, if you remember, you actually mentioned this at the beginning of our session here, talking about your nose. You said that you felt like your brush was too small. A really great piece of advice that I have for starting out is that you should always use the largest brush first, because what it will do is it will force you to focus only on making big shapes and large changes. It's going to stop you from kind of noodling around, which is when you are making lots of tiny little changes without much actually happening. And then,
I did a lot of noodling around on this one.
I do a lot of noodling too. But also, it will help you get those larger shapes down first.
This already looks really nice and smooth.
Which is important. So I am someone that tries to focus on getting super clean shapes. I like to have my surface of my sculpture really clean, and then if I want to go back in and add some more texture or secondary, tertiary form later on, I can do that. But also it's not super easy to do, so I try to keep it in that state for as long as possible.
It is not easy to do.
No, it's not. I actually get a lot of questions about it, and I don't know what to tell people other than do it more.
Do better.
Do better.
Be better. Get good.
Yeah, get good. No, more so just get your hour count up. Just sculpt more would be my advice there. I think that there are different types of cartilage, though. I might be completely mistaken. I don't know. Doesn't really matter to me.
Nope.
We should Google it.
We'll probably find a lot of information about sharks.
Yeah? Sharks got a lot of cartilage?
Sharks got a lot of cartilage.
Hashtag Abby Facts. Sharks have lots of cartilage.
Sharks. Shark Week.
Yes. This needs to come in a little bit more. Oh, I actually got a little confused there. Thought that surface was coming out. This is why it's important to rotate around a lot. Make sure you're really understanding your surface. You can also, change the angle of your light. That can sometimes be really helpful.
Wow.
I do that quite often. Even looking at it from really awkward angles, like bottom up, like you would with a flashlight on a face, that can help you to see
Yeah, that makes a big difference.
where some problem areas might occur. Or just switching your material from time to time. For the most part, though, we're, getting there. I think with maybe just a couple more brush strokes here, we will call this done and move on to another one of your sculpts. So what do you think so far?
I think that looks a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it looks a lot smoother.
Smoother.
Smoother is the word I would use.
I would say that is probably my number one critique for you. Compared to your same thing with your nose. I would say very similar situation. We could also get, a bit more depth in a couple of these areas, as I mentioned. Without a head to attach this to, looking at this, I'm just using this reference and what knowledge I have of ears. I don't sculpt a ton of ears. I have a brush that I made a long time ago that makes ears for me because I'm lazy and I don't want to sculpt more ears. So I just, throw a new ear on there and I'm like, done.
Done.
There's an ear.
It's a very good ear.
It's an okay ear. It could be a lot better.
Serves a purpose.
That's right. So let's compare really quick between your ear, where it started. That's okay. That's okay. And where the ear is now. So is there anything that kind of really sticks out to you in terms of big changes?
A lot towards all of it. I was going to say the base, and then I rescinded that statement, and it became the entire ear. I mean, you took care of the thin spot, and you cleaned up the lobe, and the only thing that I probably placed way too much importance on that you maybe didn't see, no, I don't know. I used the move brush. No, I used the move function to move in my ear canal. And it looks like that probably wasn't really that important because we seem to have filled it back in.
When sculpting, because your geometry is, you only have so many polygons and you want to reserve your polygons for the areas that can be seen. So if we're talking about nostrils or an ear canal, you don't need to, really super, go crazy and make it super deep because nobody's ever gonna see it. Nobody's ever gonna really look in there, and if you were to ever, render this with lighting and all that good stuff, it's gonna be really dark in there. You're gonna have a lot of shadows, and you can't see in there anyway. So for the most part, it's not a huge deal. I mean, we could depress that in a little bit more, but for the most part, I am fine with what you had there. I think you did a pretty good job.
One thing I really struggled with was the top of the ear towards the inside.
Up here?
Yeah, trying to get that deep and the overhang of the cartilage up there on my original ear. If you look back at that, you can see among the many things I struggled with.
Yeah, it's really tough to work on areas that kind of interact with each other, which is why I tasked you with sculpting an ear, because I knew it was a little bit more difficult than a nose. You said, I think, that, what did you say? That it felt like a little more distinct or exact, like you felt like a nose was maybe more hard? Or
the nose was like ambiguous.
Ambiguous, that's what you said.
The ear, I could just definitely see that I had a lot wrong, although, I could just see it was wrong. I couldn't make it better, but...
Yeah, that's a tough place to be in when you know something's off, and you might not know exactly what it is, or you might not know how to do it. So that's an annoying place to be for sure. But I think you did a pretty good job there. Anytime you're working on these interactive areas, like I said, that's a really tough spot to be in, tough area to work on. I could sit here and mess with this all night, like I said, and keep carving in there. But for the most part, I think that's a decent improvement, and we can continue on to your next sculpt.
Next sculpt?
Okay, so we're not actually going to look at this one too long.
Let's not.
Because you didn't really spend a lot of time on this, and it's the same attempt at the same ear. You spent a lot less time on this than you did the last one, I think.
I spent probably, I don't know how long, but then I did get up and take a nap.
Yes, that's fine. It's good to take a lot of breaks. It's okay to rest. It's okay to take breaks. I did notice that you attempted to get a bit more depth between your area, like coming out here around, let's say, your helix, around your anti-helix, around your ear canal, and just played with depth a little bit more, which is good. I think it's good to play around with those things. All right, let's continue on to your lips. Shout out to Anatomy for Sculptors. They have some really nice references and some really nice art books. What do you have to say about your lips?
So I actually took the lips a lot farther than this, and they started to look really muddy and terrible. So I found that going back on the bar above where you can like
the undo, yeah,
took me back to a better place. So believe it or not, this was as good as it got, and it only went downhill from here.
That's okay. I was actually going to say, these look really good. I think you did a really good job on these. You know, it's tough when you are moving forward. Even if I smooth this out, it immediately looks worse than kind of this, you know, faceted view. Some of that is due to the light and shadow and how it kind of gets a little bit more smooth in a couple of these areas. This kind of makes that shadow around that creased area in the middle of the lips darker and a little harder to see what's going on, which makes you not focus on it as much, which is good because it doesn't look super great here. The overall form, though, is very nice. This is, you know, I think by far your best sculpt out of what you've done here.
Well, thank you.
I would attribute part of that to using a really good reference. These are really nice to help see the kind of flow of form, essentially. When I start on new characters, I do draw overs almost identical to this. So I think that's very helpful, and I think that was attributed to your success, and I think you just had a little bit more time under your belt, which helped you out. So let's go ahead and work on your lips.
Let's work on them.
The first thing I'll do is define the major areas of your lips. So your upper lip has 3 main segments, which you can actually see over here. The middle portion and then the 2 sides. The bottom lip only has 2 major sections, split directly in the middle, called the pillows of the lips, or something like that. It's not super important. Let's take a look at some extreme angles. There's definitely some weird stuff going on up here, so let's just maybe take a step back here on our lips. Make sure these planes are defined. Maybe soften some of this form out. So when you are struggling with soft forms like this, anything that's rounded, the best thing to do is to simplify it. And the way you simplify a round form is you change it into a planar form. Something that's hard, something that's sharp, like this transition that you have going on here. So we can even do that here for this area of the lips. Very similar to what we did for the nose, remember?
Yeah.
From top to bottom plane. So we can start to understand that a little bit more. And we can do that down here maybe for the lower lip and separate that into the 2 segments that we have there, and the upper lip into the 2 segments that we have here. 3 segments that we have up top. When I start to do that, I think it becomes a little bit more obvious where maybe we need to make some changes. I think that this needs to come in a little bit more, start pinching, become a little bit more tight. Depending on what you're referencing, even with lips, there's a ton of variety in form based on age, ethnicity, a ton of different factors. I mean, you could be like me and just have super thin lips, or you could be like you and have giant, juicy lips.
Not. Stop.
So what we'll do is we'll start with those hard planes to better understand, maybe find out where some of those areas are that could use some differences, some changes. One thing you want to be careful of when you are sculpting is avoiding things kind of awkwardly lining up. This is a rounded form, or it will eventually be a rounded form, but let's just start by making it a harder form, something a bit sharper so we can better define those plane changes. Underneath the lip, because this area interacts with your chin, so we might get a slight plane change here to indicate a chin. We could just push that out like so. Keep it real rough. There's a ton of different things that we could do here to play around with them. I'm not aiming for strictly any of these lips, but if we were aiming for this one here, we'd want to pull that middle portion out a little bit further and inset that, just as we're seeing there. It's also quite a bit tighter of a plane change here. and quite a bit more narrow. So I could pull that out and start with a hard form to initially pull that out so you can kind of see that hard edge from a lighter side to a darker side, right?
Yeah, I tried to do that in my initial sculpt, which I undid a lot of my work, like I said. But it ended up becoming like this weird beaky hook right there.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I have going on here as well. And that is when, like I said, we start off with these hard plane changes to better understand the form. And then we take a moment to step it back and start to make it feel a bit more organic. But you have to understand the form that you are trying to create before you can dive directly into these super soft and round shapes. Because if you do that, you're never going to get there. You're never going to get those soft, rounded forms to look correct because you don't understand what's going on.
No, I often don't understand what's going on.
Me too. But that's why we're doing this, to maybe help out a couple other people that are trying to learn how to sculpt. And Abby needs some critique. She needs help.
Yeah, I need a little help. I'll be professional in about a week, but, until then, I need a little help.
Week and a half at most.
Yeah.
That's the goal. It's good to have...
It's good to have goals.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good to have lofty, unrealistic goals.
How'd they look?
They look like lips. There's a lot going on with them. They look like the lips of a tree.
They look like the lips of a tree.
Because there's a lot of bark. There's like a lot of, there was, before you remeshed, there were a lot of like bark lines.
Oh, I get it. So the texture on them. So that's funny that you say that because I actually use my clay brush for, if I'm sculpting like a tree branch or a tree, I will often use it to insert kind of a bark-like texture. It's pretty good at doing those kinds of forms. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Is my sculpting boring you?
I was at work a long time today.
You were at work a long time today. Abby just got back from working, an 8-hour shift already? And that's like a short day for you.
That's a very short day for me. It still felt pretty long, but... And it blossomed into 9 hours instead of 8.
That's right, it actually did. Yeah, we're on a tight schedule here with recording these videos, so next time if you could be on time, that'd be great. So we'll soften up some more form, get rid of your tree bark texture, as you call it.
Thank you.
Start to make things feel more organic. That's our goal here. I will also, at this time, start to get rid of this kind of harder plane change that I initially put in there to kind of wrap that a little bit more in an understandable way so that we could kind of see that form coming out. It's tough to figure that stuff out, but by starting off this way, it becomes a little bit more accessible.
Well, the lips I was going for truly in my head were not dissimilar to the ones on that sculpt of that girl you just did, the one with the dark hair.
Oh, yeah.
You know which one I'm talking about?
I do, actually.
Yeah.
Here.
She had nice, luscious, glossy lips.
Let's load her in.
It's the backlog. Do, 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 do. I know you're gonna cut this part, so.
Nope, this is
so
going
I can
in.
get it out of my system.
I think it's this one. Is this it?
Yes. Yes.
Hold on, the material's all janked up. So these are the lips that you were referring to.
Yes, I just could kind of vaguely remember them. I didn't look them up and look at a picture of them, but I remembered them being glossy and lustrous.
Maybe not glossy here because they're not rendered and I don't have the material that's a little bit more glossy. But yeah, I think that's it's good to have an idea in your head of where you want to go, and then also have, reference or tools at your disposal to help you get there. Just like the other sculpts, we could sit here and play with it all night, but in terms of kind of large changes moving forward, I think that feels pretty good. Let's go ahead and compare between these and where we started, just like what we did with the other ones. So obviously there is a difference in just resolution,
yes.
Right? The geometry is lacking. There's not as many polygons. And you need more polygons to get more form. Not always the case, but here it definitely was. So if we add more polygons, we can kind of see where some of the errors were. Is there anything that really kind of stands out to you that you could have worked on to push a little bit further?
I think the overall difference between the top lip coming out farther than the bottom lip, just having that interesting angle. Yeah, well, now that I'm looking at it, I nailed it the first time.
Yeah, I think so.
Man.
Your lips overall feel a little flat. Mm-hmm. So the reason why, so if you remember, I was sitting over here and you were over at your desk and you said, I need a hint of where I should start
Yeah.
with lips, right? And I said you should start on a sphere. So the reason why I recommended that was because it would at least help force you a little bit to round your lips. And it did to some extent, but pretty much from here in this middle section, it's pretty flat. You start to round out here a little bit, but for the most part, it's pretty flat. So when I start sculpting lips on a face, one thing that I will do is I will start by rounding out the form in front or you know, right below the nose, where the lips should be, to help kind of force myself to get those lips a little bit more rounded. There are other techniques that you can do to make it a little bit easier, like you can insert some teeth inside the mouth that help you just mentally understand how the lips should rest on top of the teeth.
Yes.
Because if you've ever seen someone that's missing all their teeth,
I
right?
have.
Their lips are.
Oh, God.
Well, so you work at a hospital, so I'm sure you've seen a lot. But their lips look completely different, right? They're, you know, sucked in because they're not resting on the teeth. So the teeth inform a lot of the wrap, the cylindrical wrap of the lips. So that is why I recommended them on a sphere. Obviously a little bit flat. We could look up my first lips. I'm sure they look way worse than this. This is my first time ever seeing these lips. I didn't help you along the way or anything.
Nope.
So.
Well, you helped me. You gave me a hint.
I
You
did.
said start with a sphere, and I think you told me to start with a Damien standard brush.
I did. I think
And
that's pretty
that
much all I
helped.
gave you, though.
Yeah, and then I just fumbled along and really got a lot farther than those lips that we saw here. I probably should have kept the ones that I got to just so you could see how bad it got.
Yeah, you should have saved out a second version. Maybe we can find it in your quick save folder.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's okay.
Maybe it was okay for it to go away and never be seen.
That's right. No, it's totally okay. And then from there, you know, continue to tweak to your heart's content.
You should put them all together. Put my nose on those lips and then put the ear on the side.
We can do that. Here, let's wait, the
and
nose
then
that we
load
did.
in some eyes.
Load in some eyes. Okay, so we got your nose. The scale here is a little bit off, but that's okay. Let's see, maybe around there.
Oh, that looks so good.
Yeah, we'll get there. So we got the nose. We got our ear here.
We'll have to duplicate the ear, you know.
Oh yeah, we can. No, that's easy. We
It's
can
super easy.
Yeah, we can just mirror that over to the other
Just
side.
straight up.
I think that. Oh, we need eyes.
We
can't-
obviously need eyes.
Obviously.
I haven't sculpted eyes yet, so you'll have to sculpt the eyes for me.
Well, we're not gonna sculpt complete eyes, but what we'll do is just grab a quick sphere, just like that. I mean, do we want big? Like, what do we want for
We
the
want
eyes?
really pretty eyes.
Really pretty
Yeah,
eyes,
we want
okay.
it to be pretty.
I'll make sure that they're really pretty.
Make those ears.
It's gonna take a little
Keep
bit
the
of.
ears really big though, because those are really pretty.
No, the ears are actually at the proper scale, so
Oh.
there's nothing wrong with those ears. That's pretty normal. But you said you wanted the eyes
That is
really
pretty
pretty,
normal.
so there we go.
Those are really pretty.
I think that
I
looks
really like this.
pretty good. I don't think, maybe you could make the ears, I mean, I think they're a little small. Could maybe
I think they're a little small.
Maybe
All the
change-
bigger to hear you with.
right,
You know.
maybe change the
Oh,
angle.
you go fly away. It's like a butterfly.
Okay, well, that was a nice little critique of all of your sculpts. Do you feel like you learned a lot?
I did learn a lot.
I feel like this is probably the most educational part of the entire process here. How you
It's-
can just combine it all at the end.
It's a taste of what's to come.
Yeah, hey, maybe one day you too can sculpt a character just like this one.
Maybe one day. If I try really hard.
It's a perfect ending.
It is a perfect ending.
So with that, thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully you guys at home learned something new along the way as well. And yeah, that's it. So hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye now. What did you say? See? You ain't gangster?
Oh, it's because I was leaning in like a gangster.
Yes, gangsters lean, of course. All right. Are you ready?
Yeah. I got all the silly out.
No, you didn't.